So I used to play Destiny a few years ago and I got tired of grinding, but I've always appreciated the designs and I've always found them very inspiring too. That's where the Cyber Wizard came from, or at least the idea of it. And I figured it's about time to do something else. Let's do a knight. And I lovingly named this unfinished character the Terminal Knight, whatever that means. It sounds cool, I think. Anyway, I was spinning around appreciating its magnificence, and I figured this would be a good moment to demo the cyber muscles. You might have or might not have noticed that I've used them quite extensively, and of course this character isn't even finished. We'll add some legs later, a big ass sword, and maybe a real pose this time. I got really lazy with the poses, but I digress. So this Kitbash pack, you'll find it linked below, but as you can see it adds a lot of detail and it's very easy to use. So how about we demo a little bit of that just so you can see how simple it is, and I think you can already appreciate how much it adds to the design. It makes this guy look finished even though he is far from finished. If we zoom over here you can see just how rough this character is. As you can see, I've removed all of the cyber muscles and our character is far less impressive, but we can remedy that very quickly. So I already have my IMMs loaded, which are insert multi-mesh brushes. So all I have to do is press B, and you can actually create your own custom menu with only your favorite brushes. I usually just put them here on the side, but I have them loaded over here for the time being. And I selected the straight version first. We also have a curved one that we'll get to in a second, because I want to be able to deform this very precisely to place it where I want. To be perfectly honest, the hardest part of this process is going to be making a choice because there's so many options here. I recommend that instead of using this top bar with your IMMs, you press the M key, and this will give you a completely different layout with previews. And at the end of this video, I'll also recommend another separate video that shows you how you can trim this down and leave only your favorites. So in my case, I already know which design I want because I already had it. I just have to find it again. I believe it was this one. So again, this is the straight IMM, which means, you guessed it, it's perfectly straight. But the advantage of having it like this is that we can deform it from scratch. So I just separated it. I have a special macro or you can just use a split unmasked. And let's just move it into place a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is go to this gear and use bend curve. So there's a lot of things we can do with this tool besides bending, but first let's open up with bending. So I'm going to increase the resolution, otherwise I can only move it like this. Let's increase the resolution only once, and I recommend you only do it once at first. If you want to add more resolution, do it later. So this extra point that we got in the middle is going to allow us to do that. Now just move it into place. Something like this. And I mentioned that you can do other stuff aside from just bending. For example, if you click on a point, you'll notice that we can also twist it, scale it, and squeeze it. Ooh, what's squeeze? I don't know that one. Alright, let's twist it a little bit. This is actually pretty fun. We can scale it as well if you want. I don't really need scale, but I do want the twist. And then I'm going to go to this point, and let's twist this one as well. Remember the extra resolution? Say if I wanted to give this an extra bend, now is the time to increase the resolution. Because as you can see, it's adding extra points, but it's not changing the curvature I already had. And of course, you don't have to rely exclusively on this curve bend. You can also just use the move brush. And don't worry about things deforming a little bit. At the end of the day, this is Kitbash. Focus on the general design and not too much on this little point or vertex being off by a tiny bit. So let's go back to our brushes, and this time I'm going to use the curved version. So these are all the same designs, they just have a slight curvature to them. So I'm going to grab this one. And again, we want to select a base subtool and then just draw it out. This time, instead of using my macro, I'm just going to do this. Split and mask, here it is. You can find it under Tool, Subtool, Split and Mask. But another thing to note is that it's not drawing out exactly aligned to the surface, so that's something that we can adjust with the embed value. You'll find that under Brush, I believe it's Depth, and here are the embed values. So that's something you have to experiment with. Let's just try 0, see what kind of result that gives us. 0 is better, I think. Create a completely separate duplicate. I have a hotkey for that as well. Subtool, duplicate, here it is. So that's a completely separate subtool, all by itself. So we just move that into place as well, give it some rotations. So that's essentially what I did. You can use the curve tool again to sort of scale these points individually, but honestly I would just recommend maybe using something like the move brush. You want to be a little bit careful with it because when you're dealing with very low poly counts, it can get a little bit weird. You can also maybe try move elastic, that might help. But let's try this out with the curve brush so you can see that it still works. And one final design. By the way, if you need better positioning, you can alt-click or alt-click and then drag. And if you hold down shift, you can align your gizmo to your view. But in this case, I'm only going to hold alt and then drag. That can give me a better pivot point to orient some of these cyber muscles. Oh, I actually forgot some here around the top. And here for the neck, let's disable symmetry. And if you add enough of them and are a little bit more careful than I was in this demo, then you'll eventually arrive at something that looks like this. And when you have this level of detail, you don't even need materials to create awesome looking renders. So hopefully that sheds some light on how I use this Kitbash pack. Again, you can find it linked below if you're interested. And if there's something else you want to know about this character, then let me know. And thanks for watching.